Volodymyr Zelensky says the military incursion into Kursk aims to create a buffer zone to prevent further attacks by Russia. Antony Blinken is in Tel Aviv to try to seal a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas to end more than 10 months of war.
At least one person was killed and 6 are missing after a yacht capsized off the Italian coast, with emergency services looking for survivors.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has said the military incursion into Russia's Kursk region aims to create a buffer zone to prevent further attacks by Moscow across the border. It's the first time Zelensky has stated the aim of the military operation, which was launched on August the 6th.
Є за сьогодні хороші, потрібні нам результати у знищенні російської техніки під Торецьком. І це все більш ніж захист для України. Це зараз основне завдання наших оборонних дій загалом. Знищити якомога більше російського потенціалу війни. І проводити максимум контрударної роботи.
He also used his nightly video address to appeal to international allies to speed up deliveries of military hardware for the battlefield. Zelensky's comments come on the same day the Ukrainian military released footage showing what it said was the destruction of a key bridge in Kursk, the second such bridge struck in less than 2 weeks. Destroying the bridges could disrupt Russia's supply routes and might signal that Ukraine has intentions for its troops to dig in. The Ukrainian military operation has seen Kyiv's forces seize several villages, take hundreds of prisoners and force the evacuation of tens of thousands of civilians, in what's become the largest attack on Russia since World War II. In more than a week of fighting, Russian troops are still struggling to drive out Ukraine's forces. Kyiv also hopes the operation will change the dynamic of the more than 2-year-old conflict. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has arrived in Tel Aviv to try to seal a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas to end more than 10 months of war. The evolving proposal calls for a 3-phase process in which Hamas would release all hostages abducted during its October the 7th incursion into Israel. In exchange, Israel would withdraw its forces from Gaza and release Palestinian prisoners. But Hamas, which didn't participate directly in the talks, has signaled resistance to what it calls new demands by Israel. But Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accused Hamas of sabotaging efforts to reach a ceasefire.
אני מבקש שוב להדגיש, החמאס עד לרגע זה דבק בסרבנותו, הוא אפילו לא שלח נציג לשיחות בדוחה. ולכן את הלחץ צריך להפנות לחמאס ולסינואר ולא לממשלת ישראל.
As Blinken touched down in Tel Aviv, Israeli authorities showed journalists their preparations for any attack in the northern port city of Haifa. Lebanon's Hezbollah militant group has launched drones and rockets into Israel on a near-daily basis since the start of the war, and Israel has responded with airstrikes and artillery.
We have been preparing for an attack and we are ready for anything. There are diplomatic attempts to de-escalate the situation, but we are ready for everything and anything on any front.
Meanwhile, at least one person was killed and another injured after a bomb exploded in Tel Aviv on Sunday evening, according to Israeli police. That explosion happened as health officials in Gaza said 29 people had been killed in the strip overnight and into Sunday.
At least one person was killed and 6 people are missing after a luxury super yacht carrying tourists capsized and sank off the coast of Sicily in bad weather. 15 people were rescued initially and taken to shore at Porticello, where 8 are in the hospital. Amongst the survivors was a 1-year-old child.
Allora, alle 3:30 di stamattina siamo scesi in barca, mentre che io aspettavo i marinai per andare a fare una battuta di pesca. Ho visto questi lampi e il cielo non mi piaceva e ci siamo fermati dentro i banchini, aspettando che passava questa perturbazione. Verso 4-5 ha colpito il paese di Porticello, la tromba marina. E ho messo tanta paura dentro il porto. La barca si è messa sopra un fianco, all'interno della banchina.
The British-flagged 56-metre sailboat had a crew of 10 people and was carrying 12 passengers, with British, American and Canadian nationalities, according to the Italian Coast Guard. A helicopter and rescue boats from Italian emergency services were at the scene searching for the missing people. Experienced deep-sea divers were also there to help in the search. Local media said a fierce storm had battered the area overnight, but skies were clear and seas calm by the time the search was underway.
At least 23 people have been injured after 2 gondolas on a Ferris wheel caught fire at a music festival in Leipzig. The fire started in one gondola and spread to another, with eyewitnesses reporting them spinning wildly. Local police said first responders and 4 police officers are being examined in hospital for possible smoke inhalation. A police spokesperson said an investigation into the cause of the fires is ongoing and that criminal investigators are on the scene. Heavy rains have lashed alpine regions of Austria, leaving parts of the capital Vienna underwater. Local media say downpours have caused severe damage in parts of the country and disrupted road and rail transport. National broadcaster ORF said that a woman was dragged under a bus by the force of flooding in the Döbling area in the north of Vienna and was taken to hospital in a critical condition. The amount of rain to fall on Vienna is the highest since records began more than 150 years ago. Meanwhile, cleanup operations in St. Anton continue, with trucks and excavators working to remove the mud and gravel from the road and the village. The A road to Arlberg remains closed, and a decision on when to reopen it will be taken on Monday.
Geht. Derzeit sind wir in St. Anton unten natürlich voll mit Maschinen, mit Backern, mit LKW unterwegs, und wenn Verkehr natürlich da kommt, das behindert uns natürlich unglaublich. Jetzt müssen wir erst schauen, wie wir da die Situation jetzt unten einmal halbwegs lösen, aber die Entscheidung wird heute Nachmittag einmal fallen.
St. Anton's mayor says the cleanup operation will take weeks to complete and volunteers will help clean houses in the village.
A manhunt is underway for a masked man who stabbed an 11-year-old boy to death while the child was playing football with his friends. The man attacked 3 children at a sports centre, killing one of them and then fleeing. Spanish police have launched a search and capture operation involving a dozen patrols and a helicopter to locate the still-at-large attacker. Relatives, children and residents of the town gathered for a minute of silence in tribute to the child who was killed.
China has responded to concerns raised by EU businesses over its revised anti-espionage law, which was broadened to include the transfer of so-called work secrets in February of this year. The revised law includes further restrictions on the transfer of data to other parties, but remains vague as to what kind of data is considered a national security threat by China's government. Concern surrounding the law is particularly prevalent in the pharmaceutical industry, as foreign businesses are afraid of making any attempts to certify manufacturing sites in China. The German Medicines Manufacturers Association recently said many of their inspectors refused to visit and inspect production sites in China over fears of arrest for spying under the law. But China says it's committed to providing foreign business with a market-orientated and law-based environment.
你提到中国的反间谍法，这部法律针对的是极少数危害中国国家安全的间谍行为，而不是正常的经贸投资活动。所以，相关企业只要合法经营，人员能够依法行事，就没有必要感到担心。
China is a major supplier of drugs to the EU, and these new restrictions risk exacerbating the disruption of supply chains.
Construction of a military base dedicated to a German brigade at the Rudninkai training ground started in Lithuania. Following the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Vilnius and Berlin agreed to the permanent deployment of a German brigade in Lithuania. Officials agreed for most of the soldiers to be stationed in the Lithuanian region of Rudninkai, with Lithuania promising to prepare the necessary infrastructure. During the initial stage of construction, crucial infrastructure for the future military town will be built. The brigade is expected to consist of around 5,000 soldiers. So far, Lithuania estimated that a third of them will come with their families. Berlin intends to keep a military brigade fully stationed in Lithuania until 2027. The development of a town with essential facilities to accommodate them is also underway as part of the project.
An earthquake with a preliminary magnitude of 7.0 has struck off the far eastern coast of Russia near a major naval base. The earthquake, at a depth of 6 kilometers, triggered the eruption of 2 volcanoes in the Kuril Islands on Sunday. The U.S. Pacific Tsunami Warning Center initially warned that hazardous tsunami waves were possible for coast within 480 kilometers of the epicenter. There have been no reports of any casualties.
2 new forest fires have broken out in the popular tourist towns of Yatan and Ula in southwestern Türkiye. Dozens of aircraft and ground vehicles have been dispatched to both sites, with nearly 300 personnel currently fighting the blazes. The Disaster and Emergency Management Directorate said at the weekend that more than 130 wildfires have erupted across the country in the past week. Most have been brought under control, but 5 major blazes continue in the provinces of Izmir, Aydın, Manisa, Karabakh and Bolu.